Just letting you know, I did attempt professionalism, but that hasn't worked. We're just going to wing it. Welcome to
Late to the know-how.
Simon here. This is session 0 of hopefully a long-term series of video journaling for a solo RPG campaign that I've had in mind for a while. Basically, we're going to be using a D&D 5e rule set, 2024 edition. I've got a bunch of other rule sets as well that we're going to bring stuff in and tweak the rules, but it's also going to be a little bit loosey-goosey. So as rules come in and we're not really sure about them, we're going to chuck them out. It's going to be a, what would you say, a monster crawl, dungeon crawl kind of campaign. I'll try and get some social stuff in there, but we'll just see how we go. Now, the reason why it's like that is because I'm going to be using stat block for the PC. We're going to go through the PC creation this episode, and you'll see what I mean by stat block. But essentially, we're just going to trim down a whole bunch of stuff and just make them a bit minimal, just so that it's a bit easier to play with. The rules themselves, we'll be tweaking them. The campaign itself, it's going to be very chaotic and very random. I've got lots of GM tools and tables and things like that. So we're going to try and roll on a whole bunch of tables. We've got some oracle cards and things like that as well. Just going to try and use these tools and just make something that's kind of scattered outside of where the PC is. And in the end, hopefully tie it all together to make a long-term running campaign. And hopefully the PC makes it to the end. There may be several PCs depending on how things go. Now, along the way, we're going to be 3D printing and painting miniatures and terrain. So the point will be, if I need to create a mini for a particular monster, we'll print it, we'll paint it, and we'll use it on the playfield. So yeah, it'll be a bit of a journey for all of us about seeing what things I need, what things I don't have, making stuff up as I need them, and just building up a story from there. Now, before we get onto the player character and generating them, I'm going to do just some handheld video using my smartphone just to show you the space that I'm working in, just to give you a general idea of the resources that I've got, and that way you'll see exactly where I'm coming from. So over to the smartphone.
All right, short and sweet. This is going to be terrible, so I apologize. All right, this is the play area, play mat, minis, dice tray, couple of cameras. Essentially everything that needs to take place game-wise will be taking place on here. Right, so there we've got a 3D printer. Basically, the aim is to play, don't have a mini, print it, paint it, play with it. Same with terrain, etc., etc. Just as we go, stuff might come up. We just print it, paint it, and play with it. And we just go through a journey. Over here is the first bookshelf. We've got some oracles and cards and stuff up the top. There's a whole bunch of non-D&D rule sets. Stuff by Free League is fantastic. There's Savage World stuff as well. We've got some old school D&D, DCC, etc., etc., etc. There's a bunch of other sort of rule sets. Tables, random table books of generators and stuff like that. Solo rule sets, 5e compatible rule sets, Tales of the Valiant, Level Up Advanced. More sort of, stuff to help the game master with, world building and stuff like that. And then some random stuff down the bottom. Over here we've got, some minis that I've actually painted that are actually, I think, it worked out pretty well. All right, let's go to the next room. Okay, room 2. Here we've got all our hex tiles. Unpainted, of course. There are some that are painted. Some of these are terrible, so we'll be redoing those. We've got our minis. various levels of quality painting there. We'll be printing out more hex dungeon tiles if we need to, and they'll be here and they'll be painted up. A bunch of dice there, some little spidery dudes. All right, for the books, we've got down the bottom, we've got our 5e stuff and some third-party 5e stuff. And along the bottom is just some older edition stuff that I've got. And then up the top here, I got really into Pathfinder 2nd edition when it came out. So the collector I am, I bought books and stuff like that. I haven't really been kept up with it lately, but there's a lot of stuff there. There's a lot of maps, so we've got lots of maps that we can play with when we're playing the game, and there's tiles and things like that as well. And the plan is to use a bunch of these things to get ideas from, so it'll all be used. Yeah, and then over here is the painting table and stuff like that. This is where, you know, we'll be painting up hex tiles. This one actually looks all right. Painting up some minis. There's a whole bunch of, there's a massive pile of shame I've got for minis and stuff, and hopefully this way we'll get through a whole bunch of those as well. Alrighty.
Alrighty, let's talk rule set. It's going to be a hodgepodge, but primarily it's going to be 5th edition D&D. 2024 is going to be the main source, but we'll be pulling stuff from the 2014 edition. And I've got a bunch of third-party products which I'll be using, creature books and the like. I've also got compatible rule sets, Tales of the Valiant, Level Up 5e. There'll be some Pathfinder 2nd edition stuff I'll be wanting to add in. And yeah, there's some solo stuff that I've got as well that have some interesting ideas, and we'll see if we can adapt them to sort of make a game that kind of is fun to play. I'll be documenting everything so that we don't sort of change stuff halfway through. But if something's not working, it'll get pulled out or changed. And there may be a bit of retroactive application of rules. But essentially, the point is to try to get to, you know, at a certain point, we'll be having a rule set that's fun to play. It's light, but still got a bit of stuff that interests me, a bit crunchy. We'll just see, I guess. Yeah. Alrighty, so for the player, the player character, the toon, I'm going to be attempting a modified stat block. I've played around with this a bit before. Basically, I take an NPC stat block of, you know, a class type or a style that I like, and there's quite a few in the new 2024 Monster Manual, and tweak it, add character generation stuff to it, and build up a character that's a little bit heavier than a normal NPC, but not overblown like some characters can end up. I don't really want a character that's a superhero. I still want them to be a little bit realistic. But it's, you know, you want them to have some fun stuff. And sometimes I think there's a lot of stuff that characters can do that, yeah, I don't know. Because I kind of just want a monster crawl, dungeon crawl kind of game. I'm not really looking for anything that's too sort of fancy. Yeah, they'll have a couple of companions. So basically, I'll be setting up the Holy Trinity, a tank of some sort, a DPS of some sort, and a healer of some sort. And I think starting them off around a level 2, level 3 area will be a good place for them to have a bit of skills under their belts, but still be green out in the real world. For actual play, we're going to be using the play area. When a monster comes up that I don't have a mini of, the plan will be to print the monster, paint it, and you'll get to see that sort of process, and then use it to play with. The same will be for terrain and, you know, hex terrain and dungeon terrain. We'll be trying to sort of print stuff as we go, make it as we go, make it really dynamic. There's going to be a lot of chaos involved. I've got a stack of random tables books on world building. I got oracle cards and things like that. I'm going to be pulling stuff from everywhere, but I'll be trying to decide on a system to use per episode, so that there is using the same sort of thing throughout, and then generating what works best and what doesn't, so that way for future episodes, well, I'll always be using these cards, or this table is always really good, or whatever. Yeah. And finally, we're going to be running through the PC creation. You'll see what I've done, what my thought process is, I think it'll basically give you an idea of what I'm trying to achieve when it comes to the PC and their psychics. Now, I've play tested a bunch of these before. I've done some combat simulations. I've worked out so that I've got a certain starting point, and I've worked out a bit of a process. So we'll jump over to the play table, and we'll set everything up, and we'll get started on just generating that character. Alrighty, so we all know what a stat block looks like. And this is the knights from the new Monster Manual 2024. And what I've pretty much done is I've taken the basic knight and made them into its own stat block. So I've modified it a little bit. I've dropped it down to a challenge rating of 2. Everything else is kind of the same. Tweaked it a little bit, but this is our knight character, which will be our tank for the game. Then what I've done is I've taken the priest, which is here, just turned it into a PC of some sort. Played around with it a little bit, given it some extra sort of things, just so it makes it a little bit more priestly, I guess. And that's going to be our healer for the party. Now, for the character herself, initially I was looking at using a scout, but then what I found was that I kind of wanted a bit of a hexblade, warlocky, magic usery, sword user type character. And so I came up with this, and as you can see, this is basically a stat block of a character, and it's, there's a lot going on, whereas these, they're kind of not so intimidating, I guess. And I like the less is more kind of thing. So what I did was I actually found a really good NPC resource on DriveThru called Essential NPC. This is it here. It's probably very glary. And I printed it out, and the writing's very small, so I'm going to use it on the computer instead. And there's a 2024 version, and basically these guys have generated a massive amount of NPCs that you can use, that are, scouts and brutes and captains and, assassins and spellcasters and stuff like that. Now, they have a Spellsword NPC, which I'm going to use as the base for the NPC. So we're going to run through the process of generating a character, and we'll go from there. All right, so let's get started. The first thing I did was I printed off the stat block for the NPC that I'm going to be using as the template. I'm using a challenge rating 2 Spellsword, and the reason I'm using challenge ratings instead of experience levels is because I'm using the stat block as the basis, so it's easier for me just to work in that space. Starting at 2. Just gives the characters a little bit more oomph when they start off. That's basically the reason. And then all I'm doing is I'm just following this little these 10 steps to create the character. So using the template, I then jump into the player's handbook and I grab the ancestry. I grab the background. I do any alignments, add any alignments that I want. We've got hit dice calculation, which is basically the character, the challenge rating +1. We then assign the ability scores using the standard array, and then add any modifiers from the background. We give them 3 languages. So they have common, they have their ancestry language, and if they're humanoid, you can pick one of the other ones, and an other, so something a bit more fancy. Give them another 2 skills, and then from the NPC stat block that I'm using as a template, just copy all the stuff across to your own stat block and just modify it so that it makes a bit more sense. Some stuff doesn't work. You might want to give your characters a little bit extra. You might want to say, take some stuff away. And then in terms of gear, just give them 150 gold to start off with. And that way they can buy their armor and weapons and any little extra bits. I'm not really going to be tracking torches and ammunition and stuff and rations and things, but they will need to keep that stuff in mind so that they're not just buying or not buying anything and just shooting a million arrows and not paying any consequences. But we just got to be a bit realistic. That sometimes tracking this thing can slow things down. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be using a web page called Valendrith's Monster Maker. I'll put a link, and basically it lets you make your own stat blocks in 2024 format. So it's really cool and really interesting. So what I'll do is I'll copy this across into the website, add all these, modify it using this format, and then we'll come back to what the final product looks like and we'll go over that. Okay, so I've generated the stat block. I've gone through all the steps, and this is the final stat block for our character. So I've basically made her a female wood elf. That's her ancestry. I've given her the acolyte background, but changed it from cleric to druid, just to make her a bit more woodsy. As her class, I've just put her down as a Spellsword. She's just like she's just a fighter with a bit of magic. And then from the stat block, she's got a multi-attack. So I'm letting them sort of have extra attacks just so that they've got a bit more to do. Like I said, I'm kind of going to be doing a lot of combat. I want the combat to be kind of actiony and stuff like that. So I'm happy for them to have a bit more, a bit more things to do. She has an elemental blade that she uses to attack. She has a short bow attack. She has a war arcana special ability, but that runs on a recharge, so she can't use it all the time. And then she's got some spell casting. She can do 4 spells, and she can do 1 a day, once per day, 1 of each of these. And they're not massively powerful spells, but there's stuff that can kind of add a little bit of color to it. But she does have a druidcraft cantrip. Also, she's got a reaction that when she gets hit by spells, she's got a reaction to be able to mitigate some of those attacks. Now, what I haven't done is I haven't generated a backstory yet. I'm going to be using her in her alignment to generate a backstory. In the player's handbook at the beginning, there's there's a whole bunch of tables on generating some backstory ideas. So I'm going to be generating those. And then her two companions, Blath and Yumi, I'm going to be renaming. I'm going to randomly roll on some tables to generate some names for these guys and her name as well. And then I'll be changing their little their druid backstory place that they come from to something as well. I do have a bit of an idea for her backstory. I kind of want her to be an initiate in some sort of enclave, a druidic enclave, and she's at the point now where she's ready to go out. They've given her a bit of a task to do, which basically is involved with going into the main town nearby or the village or wherever, so finding a couple of other bunch of mates to go adventuring with, and then there's a task that they have to do. I'm not sure what that task is going to be. I'll roll that up as we go when we start our actual game. But for this session 0, let's just generate a bit of a backstory for them, some names, and then next episode we'll actually start the generation of the task, what they need to do, and we'll get going from there. Okay, what we might do is let's generate the location, their starting location, and I'll just do her personality traits and her characteristics and her name, and the other two we'll do off camera. That way, when we start the next episode, we'll do a nice big dramatic introduction and we can start from there. I'll also flesh out the background a little bit, so just make it a little bit more cinematic for actually starting the adventure. But this will just give you an idea of the process that I'm going to be doing for all the characters that I do within the adventure. So the first thing we'll do is we'll generate her characteristics are like kind of like a little bit of physical and emotional characteristics using her abilities. So strength of 8, which is on the low side. Let's use our little thing here. So 3, so she's self-conscious. Her dexterity is nice and high. 3, fidgety. Constitution is quite high, so 1. Energetic, that goes well with fidgety. Energetic. Her intelligence is also quite high, so 3. Informative. Wisdom is medium. Wary or naive? Let's go wary. The charisma is low, so reserved. And that kind of matches in with her self-conscious, with her strength-wise. Now, for her alignment, there's a personality traits in the player's handbook, and it is for her alignment of, if I can find it, here we go, chaotic good, so chaotic. 3, rebellious. And her good, 2, helpful. All right, so that'll generate some nice little personality quirks and some characteristics, which I'll flesh out and off camera. Now, next is we'll generate the location of where her starting point is. And for that, I've got this Tome Adventure designed by Matt Finch. These are really cool books. And these have a couple of little locations, tables at the start. And because I'm giving her a little bit of a woodsy kind of feel, I'm actually not going to roll on for the structure. I kind of want to pick something that sounds pretty cool. But I will roll on the description and other things as well. So let's roll on for the description of the structure, which I guess is like the main building that she will be, has come from. Let's use our. So 69. So 69 on here. It says moaning, so that could be okay. Moaning. Now there's a secondary one as well, so we'll pick both of them, and that says procreation. Creation. Now for the structure itself, we actually have a few different things that we can use, and we've got forest of thee. So because she's going to be woodsy, let's do forest of thee, like that. And then let's use these first word and second word features. Let's not worry about using that. So for the first word, 61. Leech. And then on this one, mechanical. And then the second one, 48. So the second one is lycanthrope. And the first one was 41. 48, sorry. 48, gatherer. All right. We'll work something out. We'll mish that together. We'll have a bit of a think and see what we can come up with. Now, for her name, I've got a book here. This is a great book of random tables by Dice Geeks, which is a whole bunch of. He's got a bunch of books that he's just mashed together and made a compendium of. Now I've had a bit of a read through, and I'm not really impressed with the elf names. They're a little bit stereotypical, but he does have 3 human female names. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to roll twice on here, and so she'll have a common name and then maybe a secret name, and we'll just pick the one from each one, and then we'll decide which one sounds the best. So for a common name, I've got 30. So Louvain. That's where you spell it. There we go. Louvain. Maida. And Lena. And then for her secret name, 20. Whoopi. Grayson. And 20. Pepper. Pepper. Could be pretty cool. All right. So this is the names that we're going to play around with. So what I'll do is I'll have a bit of a think about those, and then we'll come back. All right. This is what we've got. We've got Lena, Spellsword of the Gatherer. So the location that she comes from is the Forest of the Moaning Leech. Pretty cool. Her name is Lena, and her secret name is Pepper. So using her characteristics and personality traits, I've come up with the following for Lena. Lena is a wood elf initiated into a druidic grove. She is self-conscious and reserved, but moves with an energetic pace and is often seen fidgeting with a braid of her hair. She is cautious of the unknown and holds knowledge that surprises most people. Even though she is helpful to those in need, she tends to be a bit of a renegade. Now, I've also got a mini that I'm going to use for her. Hopefully that's not too blurry. But I'll reprint this and paint it up a bit more woodsy, I guess. Yeah. So that's where we'll leave it for this first session 0. And hopefully there'll be a session 1. All right. Bye for now.